What is a theory? Anybody tell me what a theory is? Anybody have any theories about what a theory is? No theories. All right, well, let's look at this. There are several ways of knowing things. The first way is something called a paradigm. Anybody know what a paradigm is? We're going to talk about paradigm shifts this week. Paradigm shifts. A paradigm is basically a collection of theories that informs how we see the world. It's a very large, almost a world, a kind of large, grand scale worldview. Now, theories are subordinate to paradigms. Theories are a little bit more specific. They describe how things are supposed to work. Theories will describe how things are supposed to work. Now, gravity used to be a theory. I think gravity is now a law. I mean, I don't think it's ever been disproven that if you drop something, it's going to fall. I mean, am I right? Does anybody have any other conflicting information on that? All right. So theories, we spend our time trying, in scientists, we spend our time trying to not prove theories. We never quite prove theories, but to find support that makes our theory well supported. All right, so media effects. You guys have had an intro to mass comm class, so you may have some experience with media effects. As human beings, you've all got experience with media effects. So let's take a look at them. What do you guys think? Do media messages affect the viewers and listeners?
Yeah.
Okay. Any no's? Anybody doesn't feel particularly affected by advertising or? No? So we're all in agreement that media messages do have effects on people who view or listen to them. There are several theories, or there are several collections of theories, there are several paradigms that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the limited effects paradigm. We're going to talk about the moderate effects paradigm. And we're going to talk about a larger paradigm, which is like extensive effects, powerful effects. The powerful effects paradigm. So let's take a look at this. Around, when was it? World War I, World War II era, we were in the limited effects paradigm. Limited effects paradigm is rooted in positivism. Can anybody tell me what positivism, empiricism, and things like that are? Around that time, you remember from a couple of days ago, we talked about the progressive era, and increasingly in public relations, people were starting to rely on scientific thought, scientific theories, and things like that to better inform the persuasion of publics. We talked about Freudianism. We talked a little bit about positivism, but not that much. Positivism assumes that there is like an overall objective reality, an overall objective truth. And we can get at that truth and understand that truth through observation, or repetitious observation. If you observe the same thing happening under certain circumstances 95 times out of 100, then you can guess you're getting close to what is probably a truth. Does that make sense? You might get all scientific-y in grad school. We're good on that. Positivism is based on observation and informed decisions based on observations. We also know this, in the limited effects paradigm, the assumption is media don't really have a direct effect on people in their decision making, because there are other things out there that have more of a profound effect. What might have more of a profound effect on our thoughts and beliefs and behaviors than like a TV show?
Faith.
Oh, what?
Faith.
Faith. Okay, there's a good one. Religiosity. What else?
Parents.
Parents and family. Yeah, that's probably the number one influence on who we are today is our families. What else?
Peers.
Friends, peers. Anything else? Perhaps laws. Patriotism, beliefs, ideology, all kinds of things put media in the back seat, but we do know media has some effects. So in terms of the limited effects paradigms, we're going to go into greater detail on these theories in a moment. A lot of psychological theories, you may have heard of cognitive dissonance or selective exposure. Anybody heard of cognitive dissonance? You guys, who invented that? Or well, do you guys know who originally wrote about that? It was a guy named Leon Festinger. And this guy just loved to play chess and checkers with people. And he wrote about the theory of cognitive dissonance. He'd sit outside smoking cigarettes constantly. And he comes up with this theory of cognitive dissonance that says, well, when we have two competing thoughts or things that we believe to be true in our head, one of them is going to win out over the other. But until one of those things wins out over the other, we're going to experience an uncomfortable state called cognitive dissonance. And they always use smokers to describe cognitive dissonance because smoking, we know it's bad for you. It can cause lung cancer. It hurts people around you. Smoking is just a bad thing, but that doesn't stop people from lining up. So one of the things people may do, they may look at older folks who smoke and say, oh, well, that person smoked for 40 years, so I'll be okay. And then cognitive dissonance is alleviated and they can go light up again. Another example, diffusion of innovation is another theory. This is a fascinating theory. It looks at how people adopt things. Has anybody adopted anything lately? Any new things?
Like phrases.
Phrases? Okay, that might like that. All right, like what?
Like whenever you hang out with with new friends or whatever, you kind of like adopt the things that they say.
Oh, okay, yeah.
In your own vocabulary.
I like it. Yeah, there is a diffusion of phrases. Anybody use the word cray-cray?
Yeah.
Is that juvenile? Somebody said that was juvenile in one of my classes. I used the word cray-cray. I heard that from a college student a couple of years ago. So cray-cray. I guess cray-cray kind of diffused and fizzled out. Nobody's using that. What's the current term for cray-cray?
Crazy.
It's crazy. All right. Thank you. All right. So, getting back to the limited effects paradigm. Again, we've talked about this. Media are one of many influences, but other influences include our opinion leaders, prior held beliefs, family peers, etc. So you see how the limited effects paradigm is put together? It's got some assumptions in it. Those assumptions are that there are more powerful things shaping us in our lives than media. And media are but a small part of it and messages don't really do much for us. You good on limited effects? Does that make sense? All right. Then we get to the moderate effects paradigm. This is sort of a middle ground. It recognizes media like the limited effects paradigm. It's not all powerful in its influence, but under certain circumstances, media can have profound effects. What's one of the famous events from history in which media had a profound effect on people?
I believe the Nixon and Bush college debate.
Nixon and, what is it, Kennedy?
Yeah, Nixon and Kennedy debate.
Okay, how did that profoundly affect people?
Once they seen Nixon in person, how much he was sweating.
Yeah, he didn't look good, did he?
No.
Okay, and so you think that shifted a lot of votes over to Kennedy because Nixon just wasn't looking at himself that day, or he was looking at himself. Maybe that was the problem. What's another famous incident from history? Monica Lewinsky? And how did that have a powerful effect?
A lot of people gained respect for Bill Clinton.
Gained
Lost respect.
Lost respect. Okay. All right. I could go with Monica Lewinsky. What else? There's one that I'm looking for from way back when. Boston Tea Party? That wasn't mediated, but it did have a profound effect. And you guys are like smart. You're giving me all these examples I hadn't even thought of. But there's one big one. You talked about it in MassCom 101, I'm almost guarantee you.
How far back?
Is that Tom Cruise? What?
Oh, when he was jumping on Oprah's couch?
No. No, it has nothing to do with Tom Cruise. He was in the movie remake, The War of the Worlds. You guys remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I know you're not that old, but I mean, you guys remember discussing The War of the Worlds. So what happened? What happened when they broadcast The War of the Worlds?
People thought it was real.
They thought it was real. Why did they think it was real?
Because they came on like it was real. Like it was a real news broadcast.
So it was framed in a way that it was real. What else?
Yeah, so it was
Okay, wait. If I turn on the radio right now on this computer, They said, oh, the Martians are attacking, or however, those old voices are always kind of fluttery, And so I turn on this computer and we're hearing Martians attacking. What's the first thing you guys are going to do? Okay, you're going to think critically about it. What else? What?
Google it.
You're going to Google it. I love it. I love it. Google it. Okay, that makes sense. What else? Check social media. Man, you guys are like, I'm loving this. What else? Wait, what? Look out the window. See, the people that were affected by this apparently lacked the critical thought to be able to look out the window and see what's going on. They grabbed a shotgun, went down to the basement, and holed up. So sometimes, especially with undereducated audiences, and especially when media are new, that's another thing. When media are new and people haven't had a lot of experience with it, we tend to place more faith in whatever's coming out of it. And that was probably the case with the War of the Worlds, and it's been the case with television and internet as well. I mean, there's all kinds of lies on the internet. I think we're getting to a phase right now in which we're becoming more critical of the things we see online. But it used to be grandmas would be forwarding all kinds of urban legends all over the place. Do you guys get email forwards from your grandma? It's got all kinds of sometimes crazy stuff. No? Maybe? Okay. Well, we all know Snopes, I assume. Snopes.com. And that exists to help make people more critical thinkers. So some of the theories we see in the modern effects paradigm, one's called agenda setting. Basic premise of agenda setting is that the media tell us what to think about. We'll go into greater detail in a moment. Framing is also called second level agenda setting. The basic premise of that is that media tell us how to think about whatever it is that they're telling us to think about. Another one is uses and gratifications. I tend to kind of fall into this camp myself. Uses and gratifications operates off the assumption that people are active participants in their media experience. People seek out media to satisfy different needs they may have, and they're given different gratifications. All right, so we talked about limited effects, where media have a limited effect because we've got all these other influences in our life. We've talked about moderate effects, in which media can have powerful effects sometimes. Then we get to the powerful effects paradigm. Who all think media have powerful effects on us? Powerful effects. Who all? Show of hands. Only one person? 2, 3, 4? Wait, why do you guys think that? Why do you guys think media have powerful effects?
I know news, for instance, for me, it really could, I ain't gonna say change my attitude towards the day, but it started off the right or the wrong day.
Okay, so it shapes your mood through the day? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Like when they constantly showcasing like a particular celebrity for like a long period of time, people start to form their opinion about them, either want to follow them or not follow them, like their trends and stuff like that. It's just, I feel like it's human nature to kind of look up to somebody in a spotlight.
Oh, okay. So you're saying that we kind of look up to people in the spotlight, and through more and more coverage, there's probably more and more influence on us. We're going to get to that. That's a very good point. Anybody else?
I was going to say the same thing. I think
Okay.
they affect your opinions on people.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to get to that here in just a second. Let's take a look at what we got. As you can guess, the assumption behind powerful effects is that media have the potential to have a huge influence on audiences. And influence will increase under certain circumstances, especially if an audience has little or no opinion on the subject. Like War of the Worlds people that might not know much about Martians, but if they're invading, they better go grab the shotgun. Anybody have a Y2K stash left over? You guys remember, how old were you guys in Y2K? 1999. How old? First grade. Damn old.
Yeah, first grade.
Oh yeah, Y2K was terrifying, and it was all over the media. They were saying that ATMs were going to crash, computers were going to fall apart, It was going to create opportunities for terrorism, all kinds of crazy stuff. And what happened? Nothing. Yeah. So, but there were people out there, probably to this day, who still have their Y2K stash of toilet paper and canned tuna and ramen noodles and other shotgun shells, things like that. Media influence can increase if somebody's ego is threatened. If your belief system is threatened, media can have a profound effect on you. That's one of the characteristics. Also, we've already talked about this. The audience has no direct experience with the subject. And also, if the medium is new. I need to get in there and fix that PowerPoint. If a medium is new, it tends to have some profound effects at first as it begins to diffuse. So, a couple of examples. Powerful effects theories. The hypodermic needle or magic bullet theory. We'll go into detail about that in just a second. And then what you were talking about, Yasmin, it was something similar to cultivation theory. We'll talk about that in a second as well. So we go on powerful effects. The powerful effects can have profound effects on people and shape who we are. Here's the hypodermic needle theory. This is one of the earliest theories. People don't usually use this theory for very much anymore, but it does have some applications. You can still kind of get some hypodermic needle theory traction from things like the Super Bowl. Some people even argue that the Super Bowl is the last form of mass media that exists. Other audiences are fragmented, watching everything from Netflix to, I don't know, True Blood. Isn't that about to end?
It already ended.
It did end. And when's Better Call Saul coming on?
Oh, that's the Breaking Bad
Yeah.
spin-off. I'm not sure, but it's supposed to come out this year.
This year, okay. You guys keep me posted on that, all right?
For sure.
All right, so a hypodermic needle, what do you do with a hypodermic needle? You inject people with something. And so the hypodermic needle theory was it was based on the premise of injecting people with something. You inject a message into society through a medium, whether it's radio, newspapers, television, etc., and you end up with direct, immediate, and uniform effects among all the people who experience that message. It was like injecting a drug into somebody. It goes through the system. It hits all the parts presumably equally. Some of the examples that were used with this theory explained in the past there's a lot of World War I propaganda out there. You guys can Google World War I propaganda. There's some great stuff. I mean, basically, World War II propaganda especially. I mean, it's like they convinced people to eat to eat animal innards, livers and kidneys and stuff like that. You guys like liver? You guys like kidneys? You guys do people eat gallbladders?
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's vile, isn't it? But with the right propaganda, you can get people to do this, and that's what was done in the 50s. I mean, you watch all these 50s shows, they're talking about eating liver. I don't know anybody that eats liver these days, except my dad. He'll eat some fried chicken livers every now and then, but with them. And then the War of the Worlds is another good example of this. Here's what it looks like. Here's kind of a really grainy, blurry image for you guys. You got the mass media, they're injecting the message into a population, and the message is presumably received equally, processed and everything, and with direct, immediate, uniform effects. But stuff's a lot more complex than this. I mean, this is a little simple. It doesn't work. People are different. The next one we get to is called the two-step flow theory. Two-step flow theory says that there are people among us who are opinion leaders. For whatever reason, whether we process the news more than others, or for whatever reason we're in positions of authority, for whatever reason, people look to opinion leaders to get their own opinions. Does that make sense? A lot of people, or opinion followers, tend to get their opinions from other people that they trust.
Like Bill O'Reilly.
Possibly some people.
Yeah.
Possibly some people. So, the idea is this. opinion leaders in the process of mass media messages, they form their own opinions based on it. They create different perceptions and things like that and pass them on. And then, as a result, opinion followers become more educated from talking to these other people. Here's what that model looks like. We got the mass media flowing to the opinion leaders who have people around them. Does that make sense? This is a two-step flow. This may be one of the most important theories you will learn today. Yes?
Could you go back,
Hypodermic needle?
no, the last one.
Opinion leaders. Oh wait, yeah, no. Two-step flow. And these are available on, I think, yeah, these are available on D2L too, so you don't have to, you can download them. But please do take notes. Because, I mean, where else are you going to get awesome jokes like the ones I made? Huh? We good on that? You need another minute?
Yes.
Yeah, 20 seconds. 15 seconds. Can you guys think of any opinion leaders? I say the word opinion leader. What's the first person who comes to your mind?
Stephen Colbert.
I'm sorry?
Stephen Colbert.
Stephen Colbert. Very good. Who else? Bill O'Reilly. Who else? Grace. Nancy Grace. All right, I gotta go Google them later. Who else? Nobody thinks of Paris Hilton? All right, Paris Hilton here in a minute. All right, so I've already said this. Opinion leaders are just a very critical and powerful conduit for information via media to opinion followers. And even though opinion leaders may have access to media, opinion followers may have access to media, they still tend to get information from opinion leaders. Because a lot of times opinion leaders may have better access than opinion followers. They're better able to process the information that they get. So, one of the principles of PR is that it's good to have, sometimes you can get some traction, get a lot of mileage out of having a good spokesperson. Let me just throw an idea at you guys. Who are any Star Trek fans? Star Trek, yes, Star Trek. Only one Star Trek fan. What do you guys think of Priceline? It's got William Shatner on it, yeah. But what do you think of Priceline?
Funny commercials.
Funny commercials? Yes, they are. Well, here, just kick this idea around later on after we get through theories. What do you think of this? Now that William Shatner is a spokesperson for Priceline, and most of you guys have probably been exposed to a lot more Priceline episodes than you have Star Trek, the original series. Am I correct about that?
Yeah.
I am correct about that? Okay. But it makes you wonder if, like, him becoming a spokesperson for Priceline effectively turns every old Star Trek episode, in a sense, into a Priceline commercial. Boggles the mind, doesn't it? Well, think about that. So some opinion leaders, we got political candidates, celebrities, religious leaders, teachers, media analysts, journalists. So apparently you guys don't like Paris Hilton, so the next example is probably not the best one out there. What happens? Paris Hilton gets photographed. Do you still use T-Mobile Sidekicks? Is my PowerPoint like dated or something?
Yes.
Am I showing my age here?
Yes.
What was this, 2008?
Like 6 or 7.
All right, I gotta go find me a new celebrity with a new phone. That's all there is to it. All right, so let's think. Pretend it's like 7 years ago. All right, so Paris Hilton has a T-Mobile sidekick, and she gets a picture taken of her in public, and it goes up online, it goes all over the place, and there's probably a little bit of buzz around her using the sidekick. So, in essence, according to two-step flow, this may indicate that the sidekick is hip. So opinion followers might say, well, Paris Hilton's got one, I ought to get one. There's all kinds of psychological processing that could go into that. But that's the basic gist of two-step flow theory. If Paris Hilton's got one, then it's okay to get one, or it might be even awesome to get one. All right, Paris Hilton's a terrible example. Sorry to subject you to that. But that's okay.
The psychic thing though is true.
I'm sorry?
The psychic thing though is true. It was like cool back then.
Uh-huh.
Because I wasn't with that.
Yeah, I guess Paris Hilton was back then too, or a little bit more. So anyway, so both of these, the kind of stock value of the Sidekick and the stock value of Paris Hilton have kind of like plummeted in recent years. All right, but that's okay. We can move on to another theory here. Paris Hilton's kind of doing it for us today. Diffusion of innovations. This is awesome. This looks at how different products and ideas and different behaviors and practices will diffuse through society. And the process for each of us as individuals is first we have to become aware of a new idea or a new product or a new behavior. Become aware. Now we've got to have some kind of interest in it, or it's not going to diffuse through, we're not going to pick it up. We've got to have some kind of interest. At some point, we try it out. We have the trial phase. And we may say, this thing's terrible, or this idea is awful. Let's find something else. Or we may say, well, no, this thing's pretty awesome. Let's keep this thing around. And we end up adopting it. What are some of the things you guys have seen diffuse through society in your lifetime? No idea. How about Facebook? Facebook. It's almost a decade old. How about iPhones? Huh? They're still growing, still diffusing. What else? Play-Doh didn't diffuse in a while, but at one point it diffused. I mean, you're right. At one point, Play-Doh was, I don't know when it was, but at one point Play-Doh didn't exist, and then had a market, and then it diffused. Play-Doh is awesome, too. Except that the kids are like young, and they get in trouble with that. Carpets and things. What else? What else have you guys seen diffuse? Nothing. Well, think about that. As we go through this, think about that. Think about what things you've seen. All right, so here's the type of people you adopt. Just as there are different steps in acquiring or in adopting something, there are also different types of people. We've got innovators. These are your creative folks. They'll try anything once. At some point, they develop a critical mass, and it spreads to some early adopters. People that adopt things a little bit earlier than others, but they're not necessarily what we class as an innovator. And then as diffusion increases, we hit the early majority, then the late majority, and then the people who are slower to adopt. There's also another class of people on here called non-adopters, people that don't ever adopt something. That's how the curve goes. Innovators all the way, people that don't adopt it.
You said non-adopters?
Non-adopters. It's not on here, but that is another identified group of people in the diffusion process. People that never adopt whatever is being adopted. This thing here is pretty awesome. This is the S curve. This is what the curve looks like. On this side of the chart, we've got cumulative adoption. That means the adoption throughout the entire society. We have 0% going up to 100%. And down here, we've got a measure of time. So as time goes on, we've got more and more people have adopted the innovation. There's the early adopters, the innovators. And it takes off. We've got the early majority and the late majority. Then we got some laggards up here. That's illustrated pretty well. Eventually everybody's got something except people that don't. All right, so that's diffusion of innovations. Let's move on to the next one. Agenda setting is a little more complex. Actually, agenda setting is less complex. Agenda setting, as I mentioned, this is the idea behind this. The basic assumption is that media tell us what to think about based on what they publish. What was on the front page of the News and Sentinel today? Has anybody checked it? I didn't check it either. I probably should have admit that. Well, we're going to get to several news articles here shortly that will kind of, it may even really illuminate the agenda setting function better. Is by picking and choosing different stories, media, and also by having limited space or time in terms of broadcast, media can only get certain stories out there and they prioritize them based on various criteria. So eventually, a lot of stories are going to get ignored. But the stories that are produced, those are the ones we end up thinking about, forming opinions about, things like that. Let's see. Let's think about this for example. How many of you would be thinking about Lindsay Lohan if she weren't on TV? She hasn't really been on TV lately, has she? Huh. Okay, how about ISIS? How many of you guys would be thinking about ISIS? You would?
Thinking about it?
Yeah, would you be thinking about it if it weren't on TV and covered in the media? Okay. All right. So as you can see, I mean, a lot of the things, the contemporary topics we talk about, we have no connection to them. I mean, we would be completely ignorant of these things if it weren't for television and newspapers bringing these stories to us and giving us a treadmill to run on, giving us something to think about and talk about with each other. All right, so that's the agenda setting theory. And I hate zipping through these so quickly. We could discuss every single one of these theories for 2 hours each, but we've only got about a couple minutes. Framing theory. This is also known as second level agenda setting. Framing is the shaping of views and decisions through the selective choice of facts, themes, and words. So in the process of being a journalist is going to pick different ideas to assemble like Legos into a news story. Anybody work for the paper at Pine Log? Are you a journalist?
Yeah, I read on contributing writer.
A contributor writing. Okay, can you describe the process you use to come up with a news story?
Well, I just pick a topic that I want to write about, or if Robbie gives me a topic or whatever.
Okay, you pick a topic, so you're setting the agenda for us.
Yeah, and like this past issue, I wrote about Bid Day because that's like
Okay.
a lot of people cared about it because a lot of people participated in it.
Right.
And then I just write like the key points of like what happens during recruitment, and then I put it in.
Okay, what were your sources for this story?
I use like different girls from different sororities and different girls that just got a sorority, and I quoted them. And then, I mean, I'm in a sorority, so I know the process of recruitment.
Okay.
So I mostly use my source.
Okay, all right. So how would that news story, okay, so the news story is not about sororities then, I assume.
Yeah.
It's heavily female influenced. So what if you had chosen fraternities instead? How would that story have been different?
Well, I would have had to like go talk to fraternity guys because I don't know anything about their recruitment.
Okay.
It's
I'm-
completely separate from
Yeah, I mean, but could you just substitute in fraternity for sorority in your story?
No.
Probably not. I mean, it's two different things. So, I mean, framing is about the selective choice of different themes and words. There's also something called audience frames, in which we've all got our own frameworks for interpreting things, our own experiences, life experiences and history and things like that. So we've all got different frames for interpreting things. And ideally in journalism, what you want is the journalistic frame to resonate with the audience frames. When things resonate, you get traction, you keep readers. Framing, what else do we need to know about that? As I mentioned, the sender's going to make the selection as you wrote your story about recruitment. Or what is it? Rush? What's it called? Recruitment? Okay. All right. Then you selected different sources and different things to highlight as part of your story. So PR, here's where PR comes in. It has a huge influence on framing. PR people send out lots and lots of press releases and media alerts and media pitches and things like that. and keep a lot of PR materials on hand, because ideally, as PR practitioners, you want to be able to shape the framing of the message that media is putting out about you. That makes sense. If a journalist is covering your organization, you want to shape that coverage in a positive way that reflects positively on the organization for whom you work. So, the framing also can create the context in which discussion about things occurs. If you have a negatively framed story about an organization, that's going to set the tone for how people talk about it. And James, you're talking about your mood this morning, James, right? Mm-hmm. Media or the news shapes your mood. And so I would imagine if you get bad news, you would probably, that frame would set how you talked about that bad news with other people. Is that kind of true?
Per se, like for example, today, I was actually looking at the Ray Rice incident. I just kind of felt sorry for him.
Okay, yeah, the NFL got rid of him?
Yeah, I wish he would have made a wiser decision.
Okay. All right, so how will that affect how you talk about that decision for the rest of today?
Okay.
Until you read another Ray Rice story.
I feel sorry for him.
You feel
Sorry
sorry.
when I hear the regret in my voice. I wish he did better.
Okay. We've got a Ray Rice thing in here, actually. I don't know. If they're going to go out randomly, we'll find out. But speaking of which, we better hurry up and get through here. All right, here's some examples of framing. Here's some examples. Let's take a look at this. Apple. You guys like Mac? Mac people? Show your hands. PC people?
I'm mixed.
You're mixed. Okay. I'm not a Mac person. Apple, instead of making a last-ditch effort to retain market share, what did they do? They called it a comeback. They're like clinging on for dear life versus comeback. And you see the difference in how those words come across? War on Iraq. Dropping bombs on babies, we call that war on terrorism. That's also a euphemism, too. Or maybe considered a euphemism. We'll talk about euphemisms when we talk about propaganda. A lot of times a movie's success might be discussed in terms of box office numbers rather than the content of the film. If it's a rom-com, it has all kinds of rom-com things in it, you miss out on that part whenever we're talking about numbers, box office numbers. Does that make sense? So we could frame a movie's opening weekend in many different ways, but to the exclusion of other ways. That make sense? No? We'll get there. Here's another one I like. Katie Couric's new anchor role at CBS. They talked about that in terms of the context of her gender. Why is that even relevant? Is it relevant? Maybe it is relevant. I don't know. I talk about in terms of gender as opposed to like qualifications and experience. So the framing. There are many ways to frame things. And ideally, you want to frame things that resonate with your audience. Let's take a look at social learning theory. This is an interesting one. What do you guys think? The things we see on TV impact our views of reality? Yes? No? Maybe? Sometimes? Depends on what paradigm you're operating off of. Well, I mean, TV, I could go on about this forever. Well, let's talk about TV violence for a minute. Social learning theory really took off during some experiments that a guy named Albert Bandura did. Those experiments involved a Bobo doll. You guys know what a Bobo doll is? What's a Bobo doll?
It doesn't fall down.
Yeah, it falls and it comes back up, right? It's got sand in the bottom or something. So what he did, he showed these kids a video of this woman that was hitting the Bobo doll with a stick. And she was saying all these things they used to say in the 60s. Rock 'em, sock 'em. Like things you would see in like old Batman TV shows. So they showed him this lady like hitting the Bobo doll with a stick. And then they turned these kids loose in the room with the Bobo doll and a stick. And what did the kids do? They imitated what they saw the woman doing. And so this was used as, oh, television teaches kids to commit violence, horrible acts. We've got to eliminate violence from television and sex and other things that frighten us. But, I mean, let's think about that critically for a second. You guys see any problems with that experiment or generalizing from that experiment to all of society? What's wrong with the experiment?
Putting a bunch of kids in one room to watch a movie.
What's that?
Like, you're putting a bunch of kids in the same room. Of course, they're going to do what they see on TV because we're all together. But if you were to do it like in different homes, it wouldn't be the same.
Oh, you think there's a group
So it's probably-
influence?
Yeah, it's probably like one little girl sees another little boy doing it, so she's going to do it too because he's doing it. So
So they're imitating each other.
Yeah.
They're as much imitating each other as what they've seen on TV. That's a good one. I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
People do tend to do that. Yeah.
Like she was saying, if it was in a home, that's a whole different X factor.
Mhm.
You have the parents.
Okay.
Parents is a factor in itself, and teach your kids what they want to do.
Okay. Yeah. That's a very good one.
Also the fact that they showed them a video of like with his toy and they gave them the toy.
Okay. So there's a. It's like here. Come here.
Yeah,
Come
I
try
think they
this.
controlled it to look how they wanted it to look.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's a doll. Like, my nephew is 7, and when he sees people like being a doll on TV, he thinks that's funny. But he also knows the difference between being of a doll and being of a person.
Okay. So there's a difference in reality.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reality thing there. What are you supposed to do with a Bobo doll?
Yeah.
I mean, can you do anything else with it? I wonder why they chose a Bobo doll if that's the only thing you can do with it. All right, yeah, these are some great responses. You guys have thought about it. Have you guys been you guys know about this experiment? Okay, all right, good. All right, so with that being said, we got the Bobo doll experiment, but TV serves as a way we learn about the world. I don't think we can argue with. Well, I think it's difficult to argue with that. We will often model things we see on television. You know, 17-year-olds going on dates. I mean, no experience. You gotta have to rely on TV or some other form of instruction, you know? Has anybody done that in their life? Gone out on a date with somebody and had to rely on TV? If nobody wants to admit it. Or is that it? Okay. All right, sensitive topic. We won't go there. All right. Okay. All right, so, but TV especially serves as to expose us to things that we might not know about otherwise. I mean, it's unlikely that I will ever go to China, but I know a little bit about China because I've seen it on TV. Another thing about TV characters, and this, I'll let you guys read some of my work one of these days if you want to. I'm about to send one off to a publisher right now. We tend to carry TV characters and scenarios and things that we've seen on TV around in our heads. Think about characters while we're taking a shower. Things like that. And what we have found is that imagining interacting with TV characters helps us to understand ourselves a little bit better. They provide an imaginary conversation partner that we can kind of bounce our own ideas off of and see how they pan out. You guys don't buy into that, do you? Or you do? You do? All right. Okay. All right, so, I mean, TV has profound effects on us. We've learned how to be ourselves. I mean, to some extent, we've learned a lot about ourselves and how to be ourselves from watching TV. We're running low on time. Let's get to uses and graphs. All right, in the 1960s, culture was changing vastly. People had, the baby boomers were coming of age. They had a sense of empowerment. We saw the civil rights movement take off, women's lib, things like that. And this theory really reflected the times of the 60s. And so the assumptions are this. Communication is interactive. It's like we actively seek out different mediated experiences and to satisfy different gratifications, to satisfy different needs and get different gratifications on that. And so it's reason. We have reasons for that we choose different media or different topics or different content. And those reasons are usually going to revolve around our needs. Some of those needs might be, we might need to be entertained, We might need information, especially after and people that survive a hurricane. I guess there's not going to be any non-survivors here, but we've all been through a hurricane and the aftermath. All right, you need information after that. You need to know what's open, where to get gas, where to get water, ice, things like that. So you turn the radio. And so just apply that to the rest of your media choices, and you pretty much come up with, well, we've got our own reasons for doing the things we do, and with media to meet different needs that we have. That's uses and gratification theory. You guys ready to move on to cognitive dissonance? Ah, yeah, this is my favorite theory. Actually, my second favorite theory. Yeah, maybe it's my third favorite. I don't know. All right, so we talked about smokers. Cognitive dissonance, in essence, is an uncomfortable state caused by people holding two conflicting pieces of information. Like on the one hand, oh, I want to smoke, but knowing, oh, smoking's bad for me. Or smoking hasn't harmed me yet, so it's probably not that bad for me, versus smoking is bad for me and harms other people. So we all come into these same predispositions. There's something called the law of primacy. And what we learn first, we learn best. And as human beings, our tendency is to kind of try to spend the rest of our lives trying to uphold those initial beliefs that we established at an early age. So we tend to not believe stuff that goes against our predispositions. We tend to believe, or continue to believe, our beliefs tend to be perpetual, unless changed by different circumstances. But we don't tend to believe information that doesn't fit with what we already believe to be true. We like to ignore new information. We like to seek out information that supports the information we already have. So for this, part of PR's role, there is a lot of cognitive dissonance going on in this room, but in every single aspect of human life. And so to get over cognitive dissonance, PR writers need to introduce information that says, hey, it's okay to change. It's okay to change your beliefs, or hey, don't worry about it. It's okay to change things. This can often be accomplished by spokespeople. That's kind of a good way to do it. People we look up to. Did we watch the persuasion video the first day, second day? We did not. Oh, that's common then. Okay. The science of persuasion. All right, we'll talk a little bit more about that once we get to that video. A theory that came straight out of cognitive dissonance theory. We good on cognitive dissonance? Do we need some more examples? Are we fairly kind of clear? Just go to Wikipedia after class if you're not clear on it. Theory that grew directly out of cognitive dissonance was selective exposure. And the idea of this is that we select different media messages that reinforce whatever we're currently believing or thinking, and sometimes feeling. There's an offshoot of selective exposure called mood management theory, in which we use media to manage moods. And then there's an offshoot of that theory called affective disposition theory, but that's getting off in the weeds. In the 70s and 80s, they found evidence that, well, no, we don't have enough evidence to support selective exposure as a theory. But in the 70s and early 80s, all we had were 3 local TV stations. We had a dial with 13 channels on it. You guys probably don't remember that. You probably see these old TVs around antique stores, junk stores and things like that. They had 13 channels, and then 1, maybe 2 local newspapers. We had just very few limited sources of media. But what happened in the 80s? Well, we got cable TV. You guys weren't even born when I got all excited to get Nickelodeon. MTV. Oh, I'm getting old now. All right, so in the 80s, cable came out. Suddenly we had a vast array of channels, in the early mid-90s, internet diffused. Windows 95 came out in 1994, I think. Nobody knew what it was, but this hooked us up to the internet and all kinds of new information. And so suddenly, we're forced to have to select different topics. So selective exposure made a comeback. Selective exposure is a hot theory, well, in the past decade is kind of a hot theory, because with so many different media channels, we are forced to pick and choose. Now here's my favorite. Third person effect. This theory got its start. I was looking at some flyers the North Koreans dropped out of airplanes on African American soldiers in Korea. Back then, different regiments were segregated. They had African American regiments and then white or Anglo regiments. And so the Koreans knew this, and so what did they do? They started dropping these leaflets over the African American regiments. They said, attention, black men, we're not against you, it's your white people, it's the white people we want. Just lay down your arms and everything will be cool. Well, what happens when the white leadership got all of this? They got scared. They said, oh, these guys are going to defect. And so they removed all those regiments, which proved to be very strategically advantageous for the Koreans. And why is that? It's a third person effect. White leadership thought, oh, we're immune to these kinds of messages because we know better. But there are vulnerable populations that are not immune and can be affected and even hurt by these messages. What are some examples of the third person effect today? Everyone here has run into the third person effect. Anybody play Fallout 3? What, am I old or something? No, I'm not old.
That's a real game.
That's a real game. I mean, that's current. I mean, that's still current. But, or Grand Theft Auto, what are they up to now?
With 5 or 6.
Who don't plays Grand Theft Auto? We got a few people. What are the criticisms of that? I heard violence. What else? Sex. What else?
Drugs.
And that's the holy trinity right there. Sex, drugs, and violence. Right, and so what happens? And so what's the argument? Is this game is full of sex, drugs, and violence, which I think that makes it more interesting, but sex, drugs, and violence in the video game. What does that mean?
For adults only.
For adults only, and why?
And kids shouldn't see that.
Because kids could be damaged by it, right? Yeah. And so what do we have to do to prevent the damage?
Put a what's that? Ranking on it.
Warning letter, okay. All right.
A little letter.
Letter, like a rating or something?
PG and G for movies. I don't know if they're.
And make it 18 to purchase?
Yeah.
Censor it, all kinds of things?
Mature and for mature.
Yeah, see, that is the principle of the third person effect is that, oh, I myself am not affected by media. But you underlings are. You're weak. I need to protect you from yourselves. The third person effect is incredibly arrogant. I love this. I mean, you see it all the time. And we're all guilty of it too. Every one of us is guilty of being a third person effect perpetrator or something like that. Horror movies, video games, rap music, heavy metal, all these things push some people's buttons, and they say, no, we've got to ban that. We've got to keep this away from our kids. We've got to protect vulnerable people. So let's face it, we all want to be the hero that saves kids, you know? So think about that, the third person effect. Now we're getting to cultivation theory, and, okay, yeah, this is it. Somebody brought this up, me brought this up. This is George Gertner right there. What they do, and I believe they still do it, they analyze the entire volume of TV over a year and look at how many murders, rapes, and tortures, and deaths, and other things go on in the TV world. And then they compare that with FBI stats. And as you would probably guess, the TV world is a much more violent world than reality. So we go out to the mean, dark streets of, I don't know, Nacogdoches. Maybe that's not the best. And I've never been to Houston, so I don't. I know Albuquerque, Baton Rouge. All right, bad neighborhood in Houston. What's the chance that you're going to get mugged if you walk down the street in that bad neighborhood? Is it 1 in 10?
No, it's like a lot higher.
I said 1 in 2. I know where. Okay.
Like bad, you know,
Depends on
bad.
what time it is.
Okay. Well, I can't. It's in a bad earth.
Yeah, like,
It's like New Orleans.
If the Sixers won or not, it's a lot better.
Well, yeah, this is true. San Antonio when the Spurs win, I mean, things get kind of cray. Okay, yeah. All right. So, well, maybe 1 in 10, maybe 1 in 100. We don't know. According to FBI stats, it's like 1 in 100,000. So, statistically speaking, it's unlikely something bad's going to happen to you. But more people watch television, the more ingrained it becomes that something bad is going to happen. If we go out to the house, we're going to be raped or murdered or killed or set on fire or something bad is going to happen. Then they find that people who watch lower levels or no TV don't have these beliefs, and they tend to kind of believe more along the lines of the FBI stats. So that's how cultivation theory works. Over time, television cultivates our beliefs and attitudes to become more like the TV world versus the FBI statistical world. Does that make sense? It's a really neat methodology. So, point is, according to cultivation theory, the more TV you watch, the more your outlook is your worldview is going to reflect the television world.